working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin.
Hail Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff. With me is Jay McKenzie and, once again, Karl Folk. In today's episode, we get a look inside the group chat where the Trump administration plans military strikes, the Tesla takedown and town hall protests intensify, and we're going to discuss the concept of doomerism and whether that's even a valid accusation in times like this. Thanks again for your support. Keep listening to learn more, and remember, smash those like and subscribe buttons so we can succeed in our drive for clean OPSEC. So we knew they were idiots, but this week we found out that they were not only idiots, but idiots with terrible but clean OPSEC. Atlantic journalist Jeffrey Goldberg was invited to a group Signal chat with most of the top administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, where they were planning and launching strikes on the Houthis. At first, he thought he was somehow maybe being pranked, but then the strikes happened exactly the way the group chat said they would, and he didn't quite know what to do about this in the immediate aftermath, so he ended up doing what journalists do and writing a story about it and saying, hey, this just happened. The administration then called him 16 kinds of liar, and they ran a whole day just going off on this guy about how he was this discredited journalist and you can't listen to anything he's got to say, and they're lying and nothing was classified. And his response to that was to say, cool, and drop the entire bag of receipts on them. So now we know a whole lot more about the inner workings of how the foreign policy decisions are being made in the Trump administration. And boys, I'm scared shitless.
I am too. It looks a lot like the Telegram channels that we would infiltrate full of Nazis. I mean, it's truly like, it's kind of in jest saying that, but in all seriousness, having the command and control structure of the United States military looking a lot like a Telegram channel minus Joe Kent popping in with, read the Day of the Rope literature.
Yeah, no kidding.
It looks very similar, and frankly, it's horrifying. It's horrifying. Like, even just from a side glance, without it being like a military command kind of thing, it's horrifying. So to know that this is the people in control of the most aggressively brutal military machine in history, who has just recently removed all safeguards against civilian deaths, and who is now, gearing up and putting out, the triumph of the will propaganda to take over Greenland. It's scary in a profound way.
It really is.
Yeah, and the problem here is not Signal. Signal is nothing is going to be completely secure, but it is a fairly secure, reliable platform that we all use, and we recommend you use as well in these trying times. Like, it's good to it's good to be safe. It's good to if you need to have messages that are disappearing and don't stay there forever because you never know who's going to go through your phone, great. But one, for the members of the government to be doing this, it's illegal. I know. They don't care. That's one of many illegalities that they're currently just flouting and refusing to even acknowledge, and then deny until they're forced to actually deal with it because he released the entire chat over the Atlantic. But yeah, Signal is not the problem. It's just that this conversation, one, I'm not even sure it needed to happen. I'm not sure why all the people who were there. Why does Stephen Miller need to be there? There are plenty of people who are.
Yeah, what is his foreign policy title anyway? What is his
shadow? He's shadow foreign minister. right?
Yeah. Deputy chief of staff needs to be on there, but Trump doesn't. And it raises all sorts of questions about who's really in charge and who's really making the decisions and the dynamic between Trump and Musk. You've got JD Vance exerting some control. You've got Stephen Miller involved with everything, and it's some kind of liaison between Trump and Musk. We really don't know who's in charge, not even sure they know who's in charge, which, seems kind of bad when you're running the, you're part of the government of the leader of the free world, and you have the most powerful, sophisticated military ever in the world. And you can just bomb apartment buildings at will. And they look, they shouldn't have been having this conversation, but if they're going to have it or some version of it, it should have been in a skiff, in a secure location where there was no chance of a leak. And why didn't they do that? Well, because they just didn't feel like it. They were in different parts of the country. Some of them were actually overseas.
One of them was in Russia.
Yeah. They just kind of they didn't all need to be here. They didn't need to have these conversations, but it looked like it was a bro off. Like they were just having fun. Like we're going to go. I mean, it was like a clan channel or something for, gamers getting together and man, we're going to blow some shit up, except it's real bombs and real people that really died.
It's like you thought the Thug Shaker Central leaks were bad, and now you're reading it's like the administration talks the same fucking way.
Well, yeah, and we're getting emojis about blowing up civilians. I mean, it's one of those things that it dispels a whole bunch of myths, right? And I think right now, the reason it's sticking, I think in part is this scared the bejesus out of people who have experienced what the CIC is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's never been perfect, right? Like our country's military is definitely far from perfect. And up until now, it's been really bad at certain things in the same way that ICE is really bad at things, because it's not about actually focusing on X, Y, and Z. It's about everything's a nail.
Right.
And when you see, though, this kind of thing, where they're throwing smiley face or eggplant emojis in with literal command and control coordinates and timing logs and strike patterns, you're so far into a place that none of us have ever been in this country that I think it scared people in a profound way who knew, right? And who've known what is supposed to be. And I would assume this isn't going to leave for a while. I think this is going to stick in a really big way, especially if it happens again or something equivalent happens again. They're going to be hard pressed to get away from any of this, and it's going to start to outstrip their ability to govern.
And I want to expand on something Jay said. Signal itself is a very secure protocol.
Yes.
Most people are not going to be able to decrypt that traffic. The traffic in between devices is encrypted. That's not the problem. Never has been. The problem is if you have access to the device that is receiving that message, you can read it clear as day.
Yep.
And we are talking a group of people who probably have some of the most targeted devices on the planet.
Yes.
Every hostile foreign intelligence service out there is targeting those people. And if they're not doing their fucking job, because that's what they get paid to do.
Hell, our allies are on their phones.
Right.
Like, if you want to know what's going on, our allies are on those phones too.
We did it to the Germans. I'm sure the Germans are probably doing it to us.
Yep.
We have, one of these guys was in Russia. We understand how every single telecom provider over there has to give the FSB a backdoor into their servers.
Yes.
The guy connected to the fucking internet somehow.
Yep.
How do you do it?
Yeah.
Whose trunk line was he on? Yeah. So what you're looking at here is a bunch of people who, like Jay said, don't understand that they shouldn't even be having this conversation.
Right. Well, and again, to expand on you've already expanded on mine. I'm going to expand on you because we also had this report in Der Spiegel saying that private data and passwords of these same people that were in the Signal chat were available online. They had been leaked. They were out there. So one, you can compromise these people's phones. It's much easier if you already have their numbers and can just essentially, like, when they're, you can either try to follow them when they're in DC or wherever else and try to, you know, illegally, but get inside their phones, because that's what foreign intelligence services do. Or you can send them phishing links, which, again, I mean, they're going to get texts, they're going to get emails. These are normal people who are probably answering hundreds of emails a week, and all you have to do is get them to click on one link. So, like, the fact that their information was already out there and there's people already targeting them, and we know that there are companies whose it's their job to hack people's phones. They've done it to journalists, they've done it to political figures. Like, it's not, I mean, it's not easy. It is sophisticated, but when you're talking about people like at the highest echelons of the government, of course there's people trying to do it. So
right.
Think about how many researchers who studied the far right have had their phone SIM swapped.
Oh yeah.
Just for being a researcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then think about this, and you have the full weight of the entire world's intelligence apparatus pointed at you. Yeah. Like, I would not be shocked if we come to find out that some of these phones are sitting on 6 or 7 devices that other people are watching. Like, if your job is to do that, you're going to do it. Yeah. You can afford to do it, and you can afford to take the time to do it. And it seems like because these people don't understand that other people are going to do it, that they've put themselves and every one of us in the entire U.S. military in a place where there's extremely heightened risk, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you've got the CIA director in a chat on a Signal device saying things, well, that phone now is compromised. Like, you just have to assume that phone is compromised. And
what do you want to bet? These weren't even government devices. How many of these devices do you think were personal?
No, they absolutely weren't.
Level of that.
Well,
Tulsi was asked about this, and what did she say? Was this a personal device or a government device? And she said she'd have to investigate that.
Yeah, which means it's a personal device. And the other part is, like, if you're doing this where you're doing command and control military operations off of government property on personal phones, on personal devices, it means one thing. It means that you are trying to get around any ability to see what you're doing from a, OIG or from a FOIA. Respect. Like, this is literally a cover up, right? Like, I think that's the part that other people didn't key in on right away, but is really important. If they're doing this for military strikes, they're doing this to black bag students. They're doing it to arrange El Salvadorian super prison cells for green card holders. And it's all a way to avoid being held accountable down the road when this fails. And the Nazis burned paperwork when it became clear that the Allies and the Soviets were going to roll in, because they knew they were culpable. They knew they had recorded their crimes. And this, to me, seems very similar, where it's people covering their tracks for doing crimes against humanity and for doing war crimes. And if that's, if that's the way that we're going to look at it, which I think is the correct way, that means that they fully are in knowledge that they're not just breaking norms, they're breaking laws, both federally, internationally, and in other ways. And that's as scary or more scary than the security implications, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's so many bad angles to this story. And, as we kind of talked about a little bit before we got started, one of the big principles that the military has always operated on is chain of command. There's always been a chain of command structure that stops at the end of the day with the commander-in-chief, who's the president of the United States of America. You, as an enlisted soldier, understand that your orders are coming from there. And you can look at that and say, well, they don't always come directly from that person, but there is a chain of accountability.
Yes.
up until now.
Yep.
Now we've got a group chat where we're not real clear if it's Stephen Miller giving the orders or Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth or possibly JD Vance. We're really not 100% sure who they're listening to at this point.
Yeah.
And if you're an enlisted soldier and you have a question about whether it's, ethical to point the drone at an apartment building and take out an entire building to get to one guy, whether that's maybe a war crime or not, you are going to be the one on the hook for that
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, it's what we've seen with Israel's attacks on Gaza, right? And on Lebanon and in other places. Like, this follows a very similar track to what they've done over the last 2 years now, where it's hit the most egregious target you can because you can, lie about it, and force your military into a position where they've now crossed every one of the lines that you do as a professional or volunteer military. And it breaks every one of the precedents for post-war warfighting that we set up with the Geneva Convention, all of them, and certain other things. And I mean, this is a clear flouting of every norm and law that we've set up to protect civilians in 80 plus years.
Yeah. There's so many angles on this that are just terrible, no matter how you look at it. No matter what, there's nothing good about this.
No, there's nothing good here. This is the absence of goodness, right? Like, this is truly a look into a very dark hole.
Yeah.
Well, and talking about accountability, I know we could, it's probably overdone to say, oh, what if this had happened under Biden or Obama? And it's a completely different reality. But
I remember something about an email server at one point. Fucking quaint now.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody has resigned. They're not even really indicating that it's likely that anyone will resign. They're even refusing to investigate this, even a sham investigation. You would expect some kind of ass covering. Oh, well, it was really this or that, or we looked, but mistakes happen. They're just saying no. They're just saying
we don't give a fuck.
We don't give a fuck. What are you going to do about it? Because they think they can get away with it. And for now, they can. And as long as they get away with it, they're just going to keep saying, fuck you, we do what we want.
I mean, this is the equivalent of them coming out and yelling all of their plans in advance, right? Like, this is a coming out party for a whole new thing. And I think, between that and what we're seeing with on the ground here, where people are starting to get disappeared more than just regularly, but almost constantly, this is the loud admission of, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Do you have it in you to stop us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real different thing. It's an act of terror as much as as much as a fuck you. It's a dare. And I think that the more we see of this, whether it's with signal shit or with, we're putting Kristi Noem in front of a bunch of detainees in what looks to be a remix of Dachau.
Yeah.
It's a dare to the American
all of you
people.
Take your shirts off and stand up behind the nice American lady who's going to say something.
Yeah. And like,
well, and they know Democrats aren't going to do anything. They know Democrats aren't going to respond. So it really is like, well, who could even stop us even if they wanted to?
Yeah.
I mean, they think the people are just nothing for them to be concerned about.
Well, I think they're going to get disabused of that notion at some point here. They're going to cross every one of the lines that you can. And it's going to be like Musk going on TV to cry about how we're being mean because his share prices are flat when stuff actually starts to happen. And
small little bean.
Yeah, my small little bean self with $100 billion. It's that kind of shit. And it's what we've seen forever, though, with the far right, where any kind of pushback is seen as a slight. And it's seen as, well, you're just not giving us a fair shake for what we're doing. Well, how dare you question us? And it seems, that fever is starting to break.
Yeah.
We're starting to see these town halls are outrageous.
Yeah. We're seeing
Outrageous.
there's something out there right now. I mean, we've got the Tesla takedown movement, which was once a handful of small protests in major cities. They're at a point now where, as we record this, it is Saturday. They're looking to try and hit every Tesla dealership in the country.
Yep.
And a bunch overseas as well. You should see the ones in Canada. Those are lit.
Oh yeah, the ones
And-
in Britain are crazy. They're throwing up every one of the Tesla chargers on the lot have a Sig Heil and Musk on. Like,
Right.
it's unbelievable. And
they
Yeah.
the administration is just shook, to put it
they're
mildly. I
freak-
mean,
they're
Attorney
freaked the
General
fuck
Pam
out.
Bondi is threatening to prosecute vandals using domestic terror statutes, and now she's claiming, latest thing is that the protesters are using weapons of mass destruction in the form of Molotov cocktails.
I'm gonna be honest, like, this is the kind of shit you do when you're losing control.
Yeah.
And when you're losing control in the way that they appear to be doing on this subject, they're gonna lose control across the board. And once you say that it's domestic terrorism to go after a private company,
Yeah.
you've crossed a bridge into fucking rainbow land. And
Mhm.
most people don't give a shit. Like most people aren't going to be like, well, I shouldn't do that. It's domestic terrorism. They're going to say that's funny as hell.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. They
you
can't
know-
lock us all up.
yeah,
And I mean,
yeah, you
they've
can't
gone
really-
from saying that it's domestic terrorism to somehow key a Tesla to now it's like domestic terrorism to have protests and to talk about Elon's sales numbers.
Right.
Elon's so hurt that Tim Waltz would even mention that.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen is Elon Musk, like, lip quivering. He's mean. Could you believe he's that mean? Why would anyone be this way? And it's like, this is the thing. When you are that thin-skinned, when you are that desperate to
Mhm.
be cool, to be loved, to be something that you aren't and can never be because you can't buy it, you're at a point where, like, you're going to lose every fight you have because
Mhm.
you're never on the offensive. You're always defensive of your position and you're a reactionary, right?
Yeah.
We know that. Musk is a fucking Nazi. And when you have that mindset and the reactionary mindset and the capital thing going on, it's just going to get funnier. Because for a lot of Americans now, it's who can make Elon cry harder.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is a great game to play with a thin-skinned white supremacist crybaby. It's one of my favorite games. I know for you two, you've played a lot in the past, and it's a great
Once or twice.
like, it's the game I played with Joey Gibson and those dudes. Who can make these white snowflakes cry more because they can't do anything about what's happening to them except watch.
Yeah.
And that's also very powerful, right? Like, Americans are starting to see they have some real power to affect people who say they're the most powerful people on the planet, and god kings who are going to take us extra solo or extra planetary. These people are weak, and they're children.
And there's only so much the government can do to prop up Tesla. They're certainly trying. You've got Trump doing his little ad in front of the White House to buy Tesla, and he posted about it all day on Truth Social. You've got members of the administration going on TV saying, "Oh, Tesla, it's undervalued. Go buy it. Go buy. Keep buying the stock." And they've got this issue in Canada where what was it, like 4,000 Teslas were sold in a day, supposedly.
Sure.
That seems
Sure. Yeah,
real
that's
and
true.
legitimate. Yeah, that happened.
I sold about 16,000 pounds of coal yesterday.
Good job.
As a coal baron too.
And
Yeah.
it totally doesn't even take into account the fact that, like, the Canadians really are quite upset with this guy right now.
Well, and sales in the EU are way down.
94% down in Germany.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, you've got ministers of the Polish government saying there should be a complete boycott. Yeah, you've got, and people are pissed, and they should be. I mean, a number, whatever gets them there, whether it's Trump or Musk's support of the AfD or whatever it is, maybe it's just the Nazi salute. I don't think that goes over too well in Poland. Gosh,
No,
crazy how that
Poles,
works.
They have an issue with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
Wonder
Europe
why.
is not taking this well, and correctly so. They've actually seen what these people are in action
Mm-hmm.
within a lot of people's lifetimes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a complete recall, another complete recall of every Cybertruck out there will really, maybe that'll bump the stock price back up. Look, Tesla's falling behind, and he's supposedly running the company, but he's doing everything but running the company.
When he's come out, right? Like
Yeah.
someone asked him in an interview, "What are you doing? For all your companies?" And he was, or "How are you doing for all your companies?" And he was like, "Very badly." And like,
yeah,
this doesn't exactly inspire confidence from your boards.
No.
It's unbelievable.
Well, and he's the richest man in the world, but we have some questions about that liquidity right now, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Do we want to talk about this?
Yeah, because I mean, he somehow managed to sell Twitter.
To like some rich Saudis, some Russian oligarchs,
something like that. No,
no, he sold it to his left hand. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Follow the bean. Follow the bean. Follow the bean. Which way does the bean go? Which way does the bean go?
Yeah. How do you do the
shell company for a reason, people?
The shell game with yourself is one of the boldest ways you can just do corruption I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly, no wonder he fired everyone who goes after business interests that are doing corruption, because he knew he was going to have to sell Tesla to himself through XAI to keep any kind of argument that he's not fucking bankrupt.
Yeah.
When Tesla goes down and burns up like it's a Cybertruck after it gets a little bit damp in a rainstorm.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, so to be clear, what happened here, and I love the CNN headline because what they said is Elon Musk says he sold X, Twitter, to his AI company. He says, and they have to word it like that because yes, he posted about it on Twitter. And this is a sale from a private company he owns to another private company that he owns. It's monopoly money. It's paid up. He says that Twitter is now valued at $45 billion, which just so happens to be $1 billion more than he paid for it, which absolutely no one would put the valuation there. He's lucky if he can get a valuation in double digits. Okay,
his valuation that I saw most recently was like $8 billion, I think, for Twitter.
And that sounds about right.
This is a level of fraud and corruption that like truly can't be understated right now, and it's out in the open. It's being laundered by media, and it's also going to be one of the things that eventually, I think this is the kind of thing that's going to get Musk, because other countries where he has board members are going to realize they're getting robbed. Like, straight up robbed.
Like, what is XAI? What is that? It's his AI company that he created 2 years ago because he's mad at Sam Altman and OpenAI, and he's jealous because
he's mad that Sam Altman's machine won't spit out racist shit and won't Sig Heil like he does, and even Grok won't. Grok keeps calling him a fucking thief, a corrupt person, and that he's breaking the law. This dude can't even get AI he created to like him. Someone else.
That's so mean.
As hard as I fucking can.
Right? I want machines to love me so much. I built an AI company, and my AI
Nobody loves you, asshole. No one will.
Yeah. But XAI that he says is valued at $80 billion, which who knows? Who knows? I don't know. That rock over there, I say it's worth $500,000. I mean, it's just like it literally is picking a number
worth $1 billion.
It's none of this is real. Like there are plenty of people who still say that AI is the future and it's going to take us a million places, and this is not a bubble. It's not a bubble. It's not fake and propped up on nothing. It is. But
here's a machine bubble.
Yes. I mean, it absolutely is. And we're going to get there, and we got to talk about that more. The people who know, it's like the AI bubble is NFTs, but way worse. it's so much worse, and there's so much like institutional backing of it and belief by people who don't even understand it and don't care. They just need these venture capital firms need somewhere to put their money, and so AI is gonna work. It's gonna be fine. But look,
yeah,
AI's bullshit, but Elon Musk's AI company is the king of bullshit. Yes, it is. It is the overlord.
Should be a big flashing sign on top of that one that says bullshit.
Oh no, I mean,
This is
really,
not
Bullshit.
real. And him going on Fox News and crying about Tesla being mean to me. At the same time, he does the sale of a private company he owns to a private company he owns. It tells you he's in trouble. Like, we don't know all the details and what exactly he's doing. Maybe some of those Doge cuts, that money they're saving, is going to Elon Musk or his buddies, or God only knows. But I mean, I'm sure they're talking about it in Signal, but they're also deleting those messages, so we don't know.
Right.
But it's piles of bullshit on top of piles of bullshit, and all of this it's not sustainable.
Right.
No, none of this is sustainable, and I think what we're going to start to see is, especially as Musk really does come unglued, and he's going to, because doing what we've done for this long, we know what it looks like when a white supremacist starts to actually get needled in a way that gets to them, and we're seeing it with him.
He's going to rage quit. He's going to rage quit pretty soon.
He's going to either rage quit, or he's going to get to a point where he's such a loose cannon that it literally will be impossible for the Trump administration to constrain him.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to sink them both.
Well, and this is where I think we're starting to see the rubber meet the road. Like, you look at the town halls.
Yep.
You look at the fact that Republican congresspeople are doing town halls. And I saw some footage from one in central Indiana. I believe it's Westfield, Indiana, which is one of the suburbs of Indianapolis. I went and looked. I was curious. And I found myself watching this and just being amazed that every time this woman tries to talk, she's getting chanted down with "do your job."
Yeah.
And then people start walking out. And one of the guys on the way out says, "Wouldn't stand too close to her. She's going to get hit by lightning, by God, for all of her lies." These are not people who probably had any experience in protest up until a month ago, if that.
No.
These people are normies.
Yeah.
They are fucking pissed.
Well, yeah, and it's happening in deep red, deep red districts where, like, these people have been safe for a generation in some cases. And so I think,
Adams County, Washington did not vote for Harris. It was a 70% Trump area.
Yeah.
And he's getting killed at his town meetings, metaphorically.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. Like, this is so deeply unpopular that, like, I've been telling people online, like, if you're a progressive or a leftist, go to these meetings, not to disrupt them, but literally to go start picking up strays who are leaving. Because you have
film it yourself.
Right now, we have a real interesting position where people are truly mad. They truly are starting to get it in a fundamental way, that this is not just a political problem. It's the wealthy and the white supremacists are kicking you in the teeth repeatedly, and we have to do something different. When I see some of the Republicans crying that they're not being given a fair shake at their own town halls by their own constituents that voted in the Tea Party in some cases, that tells me that there's an inroad there that's going to be more powerful than anyone understands yet. And we're seeing it, right? Like AOC and Bernie, all the problems with Bernie aside, he's showing a direction. And someone like AOC is picking up that compass and walking with it.
Right.
And this fight against the oligarchy is incredibly powerful, in the same way the Tesla takedown is, because people want to stick it to the wealthy who are fucking them over. And this is a great way to do it. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see come July what this looks like, and what happens now after next week's what's going on now in Wisconsin with Musk. I'm
doing his damnedest to buy a Supreme Court justice race over there.
Yeah.
That
give you $1 million if you vote for my guy.
Yeah, if he loses that. in Wisconsin, after doing what he's done now, including walking right up to the I'm going to do crimes in public
Yeah.
to make sure that my people win. Well, these people are going to start shitting brick walls, not individual bricks, the entire goddamn wall, because this thing is bigger than they are. It's bigger than MAGA. It's more real than MAGA's ever been. And it's based on the same grievance structure that they weaponized and
Yeah.
Koch Industries fucking turned into the Tea Party, which started this. And if we get to a populist streak that isn't billionaire led, but is in fact against the billionaires, God help both parties, because there's nothing coming to stop it.
Right. And that's the other thing. The Democrats, I think, have had their chance to get ahead of this
Oh, they're done.
and to be leading this movement.
It's over.
They're not.
Nope.
They can say what they want about paid agitators. Cool. Who's paying them?
Yeah.
Well, and here's what I'd say too. Like you could say, okay, these really deep red Trump districts, right? 70% voted Trump. Even if everybody on these videos at these town halls is a Democrat and a Democrat from that district, fine. Maybe they are. Maybe I don't think they are. But let's say they are. Where are the counter protesters? Like if you get a group of white supremacists, of Nazis, of Patriot Front out anywhere, the counter protesters usually outnumber them by at least 10 to 1.
Oh, yeah.
And even if this is all Democrats that are coming here to harass these poor Republicans who just want to talk to their constituents, where are the Republicans who are shouting them down? Where are they? Why aren't they showing up? Is it because they also think this is some bullshit? Like either they are not okay with it, or they're not willing. And I think a lot of them probably aren't okay with it, but if they are kind of okay with it, they're not okay with it enough to show their face. They're not okay with it enough to like actually go out and support this person, because what they're doing is not popular.
They don't have the numbers to come out and support this. That's what you're saying, is that they don't have enough people to make a show of support look anything other than pathetic when they come out.
That's the one. And like, this really does beg the question of paper tiger, of manufactured pushback over the previous years when Democrats were in office or prior. Mm-hmm. And it really also does say, like, the Republican base may actually have cracked already through the bubble, the unreality bubble, in a fundamental way. And yeah, I mean, you know, Teddy Wilson, friend of the pod, Teddy Wilson.
Right. Love him. Great guy.
You know, he's doing the Lord's work right now, watching to see who's, you know, we're going to come out and protect Tesla dealerships because we need to protect our little friend Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And like
bootlickers for billionaires.
Oh God,
that's great.
You know, all the Proud Boys are coming out to protect Teslas. Well, that's actually kind of interesting, both because there'll be 6 fucking Proud Boys, and there'll be like 3%ers looking like they're going into friggin', you know, into the front line in Ukraine against the Ukrainians.
All their tactical gear.
You know, and that's just not the optics these people are used to, right? Like, I think the thing that's become very apparent, they don't know what to do when the optics don't work for them, and when people aren't manufacturing an optical illusion that they can use. And as much as Musk is putting this money into it, and these other people are putting money into it, if you don't have the ability to make people fear you in a physical way on the ground, you're shit out of luck. You don't have the social control needed to do what you want. The population outnumbers your people 100 to 1. Mm-hmm. And you're so unpopular that literally it's starting to tank ancillary businesses. That's even My Pillow and like Lindell and these guys went back in the first round of this, didn't get it that bad. And so that says something really different has started to happen, and that it's not, this isn't this might be the first time we've ever seen since 2008 a truly populist, truly popular, and truly across demographics pushback against not just the government, but the way that we do governance, and the way that we do economics, and the way we do all of this. And I think that is going to be a bigger deal than people understand when push comes to shove a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 4 hours from now, because the protests today in the worldwide takeover event are huge. I'm looking right now at San Francisco. It is 1 p.m. in San Francisco, and there these are big protests, and finally it's starting to break through in the United States in a certain way. But I've spent the last 2 weeks now outside of the country, and I can tell you that Europe, their news, they're making it very clear what the fuck's going on here, and they're pulling zero punches as to the size of the protests, the kind of pushback that we're seeing here, and the stakes. When the nightly news in Europe is showing video of American green card holders in El Salvadorian super prisons and trying to interview them through the bars, and the US news hadn't even broken that story yet, and people were still screaming that it was a conspiracy theory on all sides, that you've lost the initiative. To take a term from the US military, they've lost the initiative worldwide, and I think they are here. It's just way more subtle because the news is in the bag for the billionaire coup.
This is really interesting having this conversation, because one of the accusations that goes around, specifically about you this week, Karl, is that you're a doomer. And the funny part is, you don't sound like you think anything's doomed, not in this particular context. Like, here we are talking about the idea of there is a sleeping giant called the American people.
Yeah.
And they are really waking up to the fact that they've been screwed for a long time, and they're not real happy about it. And they are looking for a place to focus that. And this is the kind of thing that I think we've all been pointing out for a while on this and on social media and everything else. And yet, for some reason, people seem to think that's doomerism. And I'd like to hear their definition of that word.
And I mean, I asked when I was accused of that earlier this week, and they won't give you a definition, right? And I think the thing that, I mean, you guys had Jared on while I was in my undisclosed European location.
Undisclosed location.
Yeah, somewhere in Europe. He and I have a very similar view, which is the recuperative force of neoliberalism. And this doomer claim is weaponized against academics and others, activists, others who have been correct ultimately over time about where Trump's direction is, what his authoritarian goals are, and what the moves are for a decade. And when they don't define it, it becomes a catch-all term in the similar way that Trump used Antifa, right? And when you're sitting in a situation where people who are in the know have done the research and have done the work of actually being sometimes in authoritarian cultures and countries, come and say, look, these are the things that happen. These are the systems that get put in place. These are the systems of thought that become normalized. And that starts to push against the neoliberal urge to moderate, to rationalize, and to maintain status quo versus hitting your cognitive dissonance like a bell. We can see what that turns into. And, those claims roll off me now like water, but it's really indicative of what we're dealing with moderate centrists in this country and the danger they pose, not just to actually figuring this out and doing it right, but literally to some people's safety. Because ultimately, those same people are also arguing that, you shouldn't step up and put yourself in between an ICE agent and someone getting abducted on the street in a black bag raid. And sometimes that's going to be incredibly dangerous every time. But also, this argument hinges on the idea that legality is morality. And that's an unacceptable position at the best of times, but in a fascist take over and an authoritarian country where people are being extra judicially renditioned out of this country simply for writing op-eds that go against the conservative mindset, you're a threat. And it's dangerous as hell to sit there and claim that if you're against moderation, you're no different than the far right, or that you're some kind of extremist or a doomer or a conspiracy theorist. That is a maintenance of status quo at the expense of the most vulnerable and those who are speaking out. And when you sit there and do that, what I think of and what I've brought up before to you, to both of you, but also to people publicly, is like, it was illegal to protect Anne Frank. It was totally legal to be the one who turned her in and eventually killed her in a camp. And if your argument is that the law is your morality, you've already lost when fascists are in power. And that, I think, is really a tough one for people who have built their entire identity around broken windows neoliberalism that equates any kind of property destruction with an act of true evil, like black bagging a fucking protester. And these claims of doomerism are meant to neuter that and to put them in a position where they're not going to feel the cognitive dissonance hurting them. And, it's our duty to protect one another, to protect the most at risk, and to break that fucking cognitive dissonance wide open. Yeah. Because you know what? If you're going to be a white moderate and stand in the way of a fascist dictatorship that's now effectively black bagging protesters for the simple crime of writing an op-ed or speaking out against genocide, well, that puts you in a very specific position next to them. Yeah. And what we've seen is at the end of these things, whenever that is, whether that is in 4 years, whether that's in 10, whenever it is, those people get treated the same way as the ones pulling the trigger or putting people in a shower stall.
Yeah, and just following orders ain't going to cut it, man.
Exactly. We literally created entire sections of international law to deal with the people who say, well, these two things are the same.
Yeah. 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 And I think honestly there's a time for moderation.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a time for trying to find common ground with somebody on the other side. And unfortunately, we are not in those times.
That was 45 years ago at the best.
We are simply not in those times. We have a group on the other side that is acting in an extremist manner per almost anybody's definition, at which point, what do you do? Moderation is not what is going to fix this.
No.
At this point. And I think that, like you said, there's a lot of people that are having a really hard time accepting that this is how it is now.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I can see where some of this stuff was valid during the first Trump administration. This is going to get me in trouble. But I think that they weren't acting enough like what they are doing now to convince that normie mass of people that they were what the more, extreme voices were saying they were, what they have since turned out to be.
Right.
Not that those people were necessarily wrong. They were just ahead.
They were,
and it's real tough to get people to see that when you're that far ahead of where people are, where their heads are. Well, you can point out that this looks exactly like it did in Eastern Europe after, the fall of the Soviet Union. This looks exactly like term one of Putin, but they're not seeing it that way because it looks like this corny, goofy thing where you've got people like Omarosa and Scaramucci and all these other fucking idiots that they dragged out and had their 15 minutes of fame. They didn't look competent enough to be this scary.
Right.
And people couldn't take a lot of those claims seriously. They turned out to be accurate, but they weren't doing a lot of this stuff that they're doing now at the time. In the second administration, and this is where, I know Jay and I have had this conversation a lot, and we've had it on the air. We said they weren't going to have guardrails. If they got back in, they were going to do whatever the fuck they wanted to do, and they were going to do the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And since then, they have done that.
Yeah.
Now you can point to these actions, and even the slowest of the neoliberals have to look at this and say, yeah, this is what we're looking at now. So if you're still holding on to that thing,
if
you
you're
think it's
still
2017?
If you're still holding on to, we just have to lay back and take it until the midterms. We just gotta, just hang in there, guys. Just hold on. I don't know. To me, like the doomerism now, I think part of this is everybody has a different idea of what that word means, but like
Well,
I think it's a doomer idea to just say, oh, just don't do anything. Like, oh, what can we even do? Let's just wait until we can vote them out. And it's like, have you seen, like, the last week we had this new executive order that is trying to, and it's going to be fought out in the courts about voter ID laws and and what you're going to have to do to vote. Look, I voted in a city council election, I mean, a few weeks ago, and it's like, you have to check in with 3 different people, and you have to show them your driver's license and verify your address. And it's not like a simple little thing where you just show up and say, hey, that's me, and then you just sign something and you're done. Like, it's already kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, fine, I'm going to do it and whatever, but they're making it worse. They're making it harder. And who's it going to hurt? Well, the people who already have a hard time getting to the voting booths, who already are going to struggle to get off work and actually have their voice be heard. That's the whole point of this. Like, and they're just going to keep chipping away at that stuff. So yeah, to me, being a doomer in 2017 or 2016 was saying Trump and Hillary, there's no difference. It doesn't matter. Don't vote for anyone. That was doomerism then. Doomerism now to me is like, okay, guys, let's go fundraise and let's go find some good candidates and we'll just vote them out. We'll just vote them out.
These is donating to Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think everyone will find interesting, if they don't know, is like the term doomer was literally coined to talk about people who were saying that climate, if we didn't do X, Y, or Z about climate change, we would end the planet. And what's really interesting is like, when you have that, and then you have the other part, which is it was popularized by 4chan. You're going to start to get into some stuff where, like, for us who've done the counter extremism stuff, have done the work of lurking around the worst places on the web, you know what that means, right? Where they weaponized it against anyone who was actually speaking out against X, Y, or Z. And for me, it's really tough because the original sin in this country for people who are actually trying to change things is being too right too early. Yeah. And it's really damaging to people who literally will get there 10 years later and say they've always been doing it. And, I said a couple weeks ago, kind of tongue in cheek, making fun of what we've always seen on the right, which is like, first you're going to laugh at us, then you're going to get angry at us, and then you're going to say you've been saying it the entire time. And that's the reality, right? Like these claims are being used now to invert the reality that these are people who don't want to change, who want the status quo to maintain so they can feel good, so they don't feel like they're part of the problem, and that they're not doing things that ultimately will have extremely deleterious effects on all of us. And white moderates need to chill the fuck out, and they've needed to since the civil rights movement, but like this is getting to a point where like they are going to nuke their ability to have any kind of conversation, which puts them at risk for further radicalization. And we've talked about it on this show, both on this specific show and on Did Nothing Wrong. That's a trajectory we're seeing still, and I think it's related to that argument that anyone pointing out how bad this is and where it goes is a doomer. It's a radicalization that tries to put people in a position to keep them from having to do material change.
Well, Karl, things might be bad, but the economy's not doing that bad. The stock market still looks pretty good. My 401k is, it's still hanging in there. As long as that keeps being fine. I mean, what's really the harm in all of this? I mean, it's hurting
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
So maybe you should stop overreacting.
Exactly, right? Maybe I should. You're right. But also, I kind of want to see your stocks light on fire.
An alchemist.
Yeah,
Humor, how could you?
I'll take the anarchist label all day because it's
It's
true.
close to the beach house. You bastard. Oh, you can't eat? Oh, you have to cut your pills? Oh,
Uh-huh.
Man,
Uh-huh.
your insulin's making it so you can't buy food. Well, that sounds like it's going to solve itself, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, if God didn't want you to have diabetes, then why do you have it?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Oh, that's the one I'm waiting for the merger of religion and moderate bullshit, because then we're going to see this thing in its full light, which looks a lot like the far right.
And the funny part is, I think that what these people think they're moderating towards isn't exactly what they're moderating towards. There's this whole idea that somehow you're looking for a point in the middle of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
That somewhere halfway between the left and the right is the way to go. And meanwhile, there's protests at every one of these Republican town halls.
Yep.
And there was, Linwood, Washington, 3 blocks worth of protesters out today at the Tesla dealership.
Which is bananas.
It's bananas. It's crazy. You're seeing people from a populist standpoint realizing that, like, nobody's got their interests at heart right now.
Yep.
They need to get out there and say something.
Like, I think that's the thing I'm most excited about. It's on, and people know it. And that means it's only going to get weirder, because now you actually, if you're in power, right, you need your narrative to stick for one reason. And that's because you need people to follow what you're saying. If everyone's starting to say, well, hold on, let's do our own research on why capitalism's killing us. That's the one time that doing your own research is going to put people in a position for those who have spent years doing the hard work of saying, look, the system's broken fundamentally, and it's fundamentally tilted towards other people gaining more than you. That's there.
It's an inversion of the same messaging Trump ran on.
Yep. Except
Trump ran on that messaging. Those other people have more than you, and they're screwing you. Now you're seeing it from the other side.
And it's going to keep getting worse, and the Democrats are going to keep trotting out Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries as if, like...
I mean, the party's dead, right? Like,
you just keep...
The Democratic, like the corporate side, it's done. Yes. And they're going to rage against us until it's clear that their money...
Well, rage is a little...
They're going to sternly word criticism. They're going to maybe send us a letter or something.
Yeah.
Good. Send us a fucking letter. Maybe I can get more out of that than I did their last tax revo. Wait, hold on a second. I mean, maybe Schumer can do his goddamn job for 10 minutes instead of taking money from a fucking book tour and APAC.
His job is fundraising. His job is fundraising and telling you to fuck off in the nicest possible way. And
he's good at it.
Sure.
If that's his job.
He's Pelosi.
Not what he was elected to do.
Yeah, he's the Nancy Pelosi of being corrupt and telling anyone asking for mere scraps to fuck off to death. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, I think that, though, is the kind of thing, like, 10 years ago, if we were having this conversation at this level, people would have been like, holy shit, you guys are extremists. Yep. Now, the reality is people have seen through the veil, and they've seen that not just the emperor doesn't have any clothes, but they're running around naked, rolling in $1,000 bills while laughing about the fact that you can't fucking afford to eat.
Yeah.
While you can't afford to medicate your children against certain diseases, while you can't do the things you need to have a normal life. And they'll turn around at the same time and say, but if you do this, I'll lose my position of power. And that's really important, because if I don't have power, how will my kids who work at Google have their money to eat? How will my kids who work for Silicon Valley's most expensive companies have their right to have dinner?
How will they have to retire as multimillionaires in their 70s rather than dying in office at 90?
How are we going to find some place where climate change isn't going to kill us like it is all of you plebs?
Why would you do that to them? This is
I know I'm an asshole for it, but maybe we should.
So mean.
Seriously,
I think you're gonna make them join Elon Musk's support group. I mean,
to be fair, I actually do think we're gonna see a little bit of the deflection, like we've seen with Fetterman and with Gallegos going after fucking Mark Andreessen and all these people. I think we're gonna start to see some real defectors to the right because the left's so mean to us.
Yeah, they didn't leave me. I didn't leave them. They left me.
Yeah.
We'll hear that.
Yeah, they're too extreme. They left the party.
Well, I think what we're going to see, and not just because of climate change, to borrow a phrase from another era, is that it's going to be a really long, hot summer.
Oh God, yeah. No, this is. I do have a feeling like 2020 is going to seem rather fucking tame in certain ways because this really has the shape and the kindling for something that's truly not just like. It's tough. The reality is 2020, there were a lot of people against what was going on purely because they thought the cops were right. This has a different tone. This has a different view. And people who normally might be opposed to someone, going out and saying, look, this is a horribly racist thing that happened, are going to have a different view of this. And for better or worse, that's going to change the dynamic. And if they can't muster fucking Proud Boys and Threepers and Patriot Front children with their little trash can shields pretending that they're the Roman fucking phalanx, this is going to get real.
Who's coming out?
It's going to get very weird for them because the optics will not just be against them. There won't be room for them.
There are no good guys on that side.
No.
There is nobody you can root for. You going to root for Elon? No, you're not. Everybody hates Elon.
Yeah. And it's going to be, Bannon is going to be the most interesting one to watch. I've been watching him as a bellwether. He is scared shitless of all of this. And he's talking about how Trump's going to go to prison for Signalgate, how Musk is really against them because he's a billionaire, how he's actually a closet communist trying to help the left by being so bad at his job. Like it's insane, but it says
really bonkers levels of cope, but at the same time,
exactly. The amount of copium being pumped into that office rivals only at the height of the impeachment hearings, where that whole side was crying about how Daddy Trump was being unfairly maligned for being a fucking patriot. It's unbelievable, and it means we're winning. As bad as it feels, as scary as it is, as dark as it is, we're starting to light candles in all of us and walking into the dark together. And you know what? You can't blow out all of our candles. Sorry, guys.
Well, thankfully, Elon Musk will never stop tweeting, even after he's sold his company to himself. Maybe he'll have to create another company that he can sell that to in 6 months. You never know. But everything he does makes him less popular, which is really, it's a gift. He has a unique ability to be hated. And I just want to say, keep at it, buddy. Keep going.
Please,
doing great.
Please double down because it's actually quite funny and I like watching.
And that may be how we finally end up getting out of this thing.
Yeah, it literally may be. I do truly think that Musk may be the guy who literally sinks a fascist movement because he's too fucking stupid and emotionally wrecked to do what they need to do because he's a fucking coward.